Welcome to the Israel Answers series, connecting Israel, the Bible, and you. Join Susan Michael as she explores timely issues and current events from a scriptural perspective to equip the Christian world with a balanced and biblical response. Be sure to subscribe for future episodes, which will ignite your faith and bring the Bible to life in your everyday world. Now, let's join Susan with your Israel Answers.
Welcome to today's Out of Zion podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Susan Michael, and I am so happy to have with me today a dear friend, longtime colleague in Washington, D.C. in support of Israel. She does such an amazing work, and that's Penny Nance. She is the president and CEO of Concerned Women for America and does a fabulous job. So I'm just so happy to be able to introduce her to you, to find out a little bit more about her work. So Penny,
thank you. That was very sweet. Thank you, Susan. I'm a fan of yours, so I appreciate all the great work you all do.
We've known each other a number of years.
We have, yes.
And are in the battle together there in support of Israel, and especially in the Washington, D.C. circles. But I've also begun working with your young women for working on the campuses. And that seems to be the big issue today. Everyone's very concerned about the younger generation.
Yeah.
Are we losing them to the faith? Are we losing them in support of Israel and even other issues? And I know that you've really got your thumb on the pulse of this. Thank you. We want to hear about your work with the campuses and sort of what you're observing.
Well, and you're right to be worried. I mean, I came back to CWA. I was a young lobbyist there in my 20s, and then I got married. My husband worked for Prison Fellowship Ministries. We got married. We had babies pretty quickly. A little sooner actually than we planned. 3 months after we got married, I found I was pregnant. Our first anniversary, I had to rush home to nurse. It was that. So anyway, God's timing is perfect. That's our beautiful Claire, and then we have a son who's active duty military. And anyway, so when I came back, Mrs. LaHaye in 2010 asked me to come back and run the organization's CEO and president. And we prayed about it as a family. I agreed to do it. And when I came back, I realized, our members we'd aged as an organization. What tends to be like Mrs. Hay brought people in, and there were people kind of more in my age group, but we really were missing on the younger ones. And I started to look around and realize that, conservatives have not invested in our young people, particularly young women, the way the left had. They spend billions of dollars a year. And that's wrong on many levels. It's foolish because this is the next generation, but also there's the biblical principle of Titus 2 for the older women to teach the younger women, and we weren't doing that. So we started Young Women for America, and it has just blown up. We have about 400 chapters and leaders around the country on campuses, and they are incredible. These are godly Christian girls who love the Lord, who believe their Bible, who are outspoken Esthers of this time, and they are the worst nightmare of the keffiyeh-wearing bullies on colleges' campuses all over this country. They're not having it. After October 7th, they led all sorts of rallies and prayer times where they brought in their Jewish students, their Jewish friends, and linked arms with them in a way that I've never seen before. And just out of kindness and compassion, I attended one of those in South Carolina at Clemson University, and the head of the Jewish fraternity came, and he just cried. He was like, "This is the first time since October 7th I felt supported on my campus." And I was like, "How is that possible? This is red state South Carolina. How is this possible?" But it was. And so it's been an incredibly life-giving, life-bringing opportunity for them. But the other thing that people need to be aware of is there has been, and I think people are starting to become aware, this insidious movement, and I call it a cancer on our movement, of anti-Semitism that has sneaked into the movement via some very prominent voices. Candace Owens is one of them. People that respect her, that love her, that have followed her. And all of a sudden she's saying out and out lies, and they're buying into it. And it's the same old tropes. It's always the Jews' fault. When Charlie Kirk was shot, somehow Mossad was supposed to be a part of it. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But you'd be surprised, people that listen. So CWA has been very outspoken on that. We've said that we will absolutely call it out when we see it. There's no room for anti-Semitism in our movement, and we won't work with people that are. I mean, we just have no interest. William F. Buckley in the 1950s realized the KKK and some others, conspiracy theorists, had started to infiltrate the conservative movement. And he, at that time, of course, he was the publisher of National Review, and he said, we've got to root it out where we find it. And he did. Yeah, he managed to do that. And then out of that came the Barry Goldwater campaign, 1964, and Ronald Reagan, and sort of the flourishing of the movement. We have to be very serious. You know, the Bible's very clear. I will bless them that bless thee, I will curse them that curse thee. We need to love Israel for many reasons. On geopolitical level, Israel is the only other democracy in the Middle East. It brings gifts to people around the world, including medical technology like the PET scan. Your iPhone has all sorts of components in it. I mean, it makes me laugh, like the Free Gaza people that are carrying around their iPhones. Like, if you're gonna like the BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction movement, you better put down that phone, because you're not gonna have it without Israel.
Or computer,
and there's so many things. And so even if you don't, from a biblical standpoint, agree with me, you must understand that the U.S.-Israel relationship is potent, important, strategic for the United States. And Israel is going nowhere. It's the only Jewish state in the entire world, whereas there's 55 majority Muslim countries around the world. So one little state, the country the size of New Jersey, and all this to do around it, I don't know how to explain that other than spiritual warfare.
Right, absolutely. Well, tell us, I'm so encouraged to hear you have 400 young women on these campuses.
Well, and many more than that, but that's actually chapters. Yeah. So this is just the presidents and ambassadors.
But give us some stories of what they've encountered on campus, and how do you train them to handle these situations?
Well, we bring them to Washington at least once a year, and usually there's a seminar, a separate one for just the chapter presidents, a couple levels of leadership. And so we teach them things like, we teach them the biblical principles, teach them free market principles, constitutional principles. We teach them the undergirdings of what they believe and why they believe it. And we train them to be ready to give an answer when they're asked, to do an interview like we're doing here. We teach them to lobby. They go constantly, they're asked to come and give testimony before state legislatures and Congress on trans identity, the whole trans movement, and women in sports. They've been very outspoken. I think last week we had 3 different state legislatures that our young women were testifying in committee on bills that had to do with the unique dignity of women and women's sports only for women, because many of them are athletes. So a lot of young leaders come up sort of through athletics and learn competition and learn all the great things through that. And so, we're training them to be leaders. And they love it, and they're growing. And honestly, the issue is I just need enough staff to keep up with them, because they're all volunteer, right? And so I'm like, I can grow that beyond imagination, because really we're not just bringing numbers. There's a lot of mentorship involved. They're young people; they need a lot, and so we're working along with them and keeping in touch with them and making sure that they're really learning and growing and okay. And, it's because it's a lot, because in some cases it doesn't make them popular. I think about, CWA was ahead of a lot of people on the sort of trans movement, trans identity, and women's sports. So 10 years ago, like, we were trying to sound the alarm, like, when you put gender in a policy or in a law, this is what they mean. They mean 72 genders. They don't mean men and women. And literally people will laugh. They're like, what are you talking about? That can't be true. Don't be alarmist. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. And we're like, no, this is real. And we kept going. And so then the race, the NCAA swim meet with Leah Thomas versus Riley Gaines came into the forefront. Well, we had already been working on it, and outside that actual swim meet, we were having a rally already. And our Young Women for America leader, who was running it and was, at the press conference, had to have armed security. The school actually gave it to her because they were threatening her over it. But she's tiny. She's like 4'11", little spitfire, and she's like, they couldn't intimidate her. She's like, bring it. I'm doing what's right. I'm going to do it. You can't stop me. The interesting thing is, we also, just to fast forward on that, on that same day, filed a civil rights complaint with the Department of Education against UPenn for why did they put a man in that situation? Why did these young women have to share a locker room with a man? Why did they have to lose their trophies to a man? And we recently won on that. The Trump administration and Linda McMahon, who's a secretary, the education secretary, ruled in our favor, forced UPenn to pay a fine, forced them to send notes of apology to everybody in with it, forced them to take down the numbers for Leah Thomas, gave the trophy to the rightful owners, and we've moved forward since then. But I will tell people, we have, the President Trump has been great on this, but we don't have it in law now. It's just an executive order, and those change with every administration. So we've got to get it over the finish line into law.
Well, your young women on these campuses have to feel the battle is increasing.
Yes.
And when it comes to the Israel issue, even more so.
Right, I think so.
Yeah. So give us some of your observations in that and some of the stories of what they're encountering.
Yes. Well, it's not odd for them. I heard one woman talk about, she was actually a Jewish student, and she said that she went to, this is during October 7th, someone sent her an Israel flag, and she said she wasn't wearing it, she had it out, she just had it kind of balled up in her hand, and she's walking through campus, and somebody got in her face and called her a dirty Jew. We're hearing these stories over and over again. When our girls have done events, they've had people show up with signs and heckle them and yell at them, but they're not. Listen, I could talk about that, but I don't very much, because I feel like that it's whatever the other side does, it just makes them stronger, because they are just called to this fight. We worked really closely also with the hostage families, and brought in the last training the Nutra family, the parents of Mayor Nutra, who was one of the last 3 hostages to come home. And we also brought them to the Republican convention. So they were the couple, the Jewish couple who were hostage parents that spoke. And because of that, the Democrats also had to do that, which we were very happy, because they were all ready to just ignore the whole thing. And President Trump knew them and knew to keep his foot on the gas to insist that Omer Nutra's body was brought back to his parents. Yeah. And we've stayed in contact with them, but there is still so much hurt, and the anti-Semitism is definitely still on college campuses right now, and it's not going away. We just have to train people to stand up, understand the truth, to be able to speak truth in those situations, speak truth to power, be involved with their local college president and say absolutely not. And by the way, we're not going to do a boycott, divest, and sanctions movement in our college campus finances either.
Well, God bless you and your young people.
Yeah.
That's just so encouraging.
They're amazing
to know about them.
Thank you.
Tell me, what do you think what do we need to do to make a difference against the anti-Semitism, against these right-wing voices that are really influencing the young people? How can we make a difference there?
Well, I would say one thing people can do if they don't feel ready and really feel like they have the information. I know your organization has great information. We have an entire lesson plan on Israel, on the history of Israel, on so basically the issues around Israel and anti-Semitism. And so if people want to come to our website, concernedwomen.org, they can order that. But you need to educate yourself, and then really pray about God giving you the opportunities and being willing to speak. When you hear it, you need to speak up. And you need to let others know. I've been so blessed by the reaction of Jewish people because they're not used to Christians taking their part. You know, I think they're all still wounded by the fact that, and you and I both know this, it's not easy for me to say, I hate saying it, but during World War II, there were a great many Christians who cared, but there were way more who were not interested and didn't want to hear it. I mean, it's kind of like things today. They didn't want to hear bad news about the Holocaust. And even, you know, I read a book by Joel Rosenberg and was brokenhearted to realize there was a church really on the campus of Auschwitz, on that actual site in which Nazi soldiers were going to church every Sunday. So they remember all this. They know all of this. And wouldn't it be great if Christians could say, never again. We're not going to let this happen again. And where we see it, we're going to call it out. And that means not listening to voices that are anti-Semitic, calling out and calling it what it is. Do not give money to those people. And then, you know, supporting groups like yours, groups like mine that are actually doing the good work.
Because it's easy to say never again, but it's not easy to actually open your mouth and speak out against what you see and what you hear. And that was the fault. That was the problem with the church in Germany.
It was.
That they didn't speak up. They might have not agreed with what was happening, but they were afraid.
Yeah.
And they were not willing to pay a price for speaking out.
I can't believe, you know, when I hear people quoting, and it's very few, let's be real, and they get an outsized a bit of attention. I think about Nick Fuentes, you know, quoting Stalin and Hitler. I just can't believe it, but these are narcissistic people who want attention and they're willing to do it, but we should be willing to call it out. It felt, I was like, was this what it was like in the 1930s? You know, before the actual World War II, before Hitler, as Hitler's coming to power, and Germany was the most educated country in the world, and one of the most affluent. It's not as if they were purely ignorant. They should have known better. But the people that did know were afraid to speak up. And then by the time they realized how bad it was too late.
Yeah, the people that carried out the Holocaust were actually educated people. They thought what they were doing was right because they had been brainwashed.
Well, yes. Well, and it's how it starts. It's how it starts. People think about, you know, they're like, oh, and listen, I believe in the First Amendment. Everybody has the right to speak. And, you know, the truth is the answer to that is more free speech, right? Not less free speech. However, I will say that when you platform people who have, you know, horrific ideas about anti-Semitism and or don't even specifically platform them, but don't challenge them, that's even worse. And so you're really feeding it. And we know that, you know, advertising changes minds, feelings, and actions. That's why we spend billions and billions of dollars a year on advertising around the world. So those thoughts and images have impact. Your job, all of you, your job is to counter that.
Yes, amen. Well, as we bring this to a close, what would be like a final thought, something that you really want to encourage your listening audience to know or to do, how to respond to this?
Well, I'll close with two things. One is sign up for our weekly updates, and I'll really just kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. If you want to be involved, or even if you just want to pray over what we're doing, you go to concernedwomen.org, follow us on all the social media, CWA, YWA, I have my own. And I think it's a good way to have just sort of a thought and the idea of what we're doing. But I love Reagan. I always quote Reagan that, you know, and I think this is really essential for now. And he said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States when men were free. It's on us.
How profound. Thank you for raising up an army of young women to be, they're already today's Christian leaders, but tomorrow's Christian leaders.
Amen. They're going to run our nation one day. We may have our first woman president out of that group. We'll see.
there you go. And they're going to impact their generation. And you're training leaders. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your great work.
Yeah.
Love and appreciate you.
Great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. We will put links to the websites that she mentioned for Concerned Women for America in today's show notes. We'll see you back here. Thank you and God bless. Hey, just give me one more minute. I want to offer you one of our free resources. We have wonderful resources in our show notes. And if you go to our website at ICEJUSA.org/show notes, you'll find links for a number of our free offers. We have downloadables to help root you in Scripture, help you to understand the issues surrounding Israel, and the importance of Christian support for Israel. And don't forget, please follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and stay connected. Thank you and God bless.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Out of Zion with Susan Michael. Be sure to subscribe to Out of Zion now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Pray.com, Salem One Place, Salem Life Audio. Out of Zion with Susan Michael is a production of ICEJ USA, all rights reserved.